Hi guys, in this Cinema 4D tutorial, I'm going to show you how to do a 3D logo. First, open a new document, and we're going to go to primitives, and we're going to go into torus. So bring that one up, and I want to bring up lines NB on your keyboard. And for the orientation, we're going to go +Z. Next, I want to bring in a deformer, so I'm going to use a twist deformer, and I'm going to drag that underneath a child of the torus. We're going to choose fit to parent, and I want to use the angle to spin this around to about here, and let me rotate around. And that looks about right, maybe. And this is really your own judgment. I'm just kind of looking for an interesting shape. Okay, so next I want to go to MoGraph and bring in MoText. And let's drag this down to the bottom. Let me zoom out a little bit. And I want to choose middle. Bring this underneath, and I just want to choose a different or a smaller size. And you can use any text that you want, but I was playing around with just some ideas and just some names, so I'm choosing Vector Labs. Not sure why, it just sounded cool. So bring this up, and I want to put on fillet caps. And let's try 5 steps. And let me zoom in a little bit just to see the edges. And the edges don't have to be so round. Either 2 or 3. And keep in mind, if you want to go in between 2 and 3, you can hold down Option and just go in these smaller increments. But I think I'm going to use 2. So zoom out. And we can bring this down a little bit. So I'm going to bring in a camera. And just kind of center our whole logo here. Okay, uncheck that. And now what I'd like to do is start bringing in some materials. So I'm going to double click in the materials window, or you can also just go to new material. And I want to make a material for our shape here. And so go to color, texture, and then I want to go to Fresnel. Click in this window and double click on this node. And I want to go to, this is just judgment, you can use your own style and colors, but I kind of like sort of a reddish orange. And holding down Command, click and drag this node and bring this all the way over and just pull out this, the dark one, the black node. Double click on that, and we're just going to make this a lot darker. About here maybe, we'll give that a try. Next I want to go to reflection. So check that, and I also want to go to Fresnel. Except I want to bring the reflection, or the brightness, the overall brightness down a bit. Maybe 15, 13 around there. And the mix strength we can also bring down pretty low. Blurriness, we can play with this. I usually go a little bit, maybe around 3%. And the color, I usually don't keep everything so white. So I usually just go an off-white color. And subtlety is the key here. Next, I want to go to bump. I want to give it a little bit of a texture. So bump, texture, and then we'll go to noise. And then if you click in noise, we'll go to a different type of noise. This booyah. And I always mess around with the seed a little bit, just to give it some just to give it some variation. I usually don't like to use right out of the box type settings, so I just I play around with the settings just to give it a different look. You can kind of experiment with some of these different settings just to see something that you might like. But I usually just I play around with these percentages and numbers just to give something a little bit different. And go up one level, and we can play around with the strength a little bit. I like it pretty low. I like it kind of subtle, and we'll do a few test renders just to see what that looks like. And specular, again, I'll just bump this to an off color, and we can also experiment with the height. Okay, next, also want to make a material for the text that we have here. And again, sorry if this is repeating, but I just want to give it an off color. It doesn't have to be too extreme, just slightly off white. I'm in my specular. But go to the color and just kind of give it a little bump. And you can put on a reflection to this one as well. It kind of gives it, a nice look to it. But you don't have to. If I do that, I'm going to bring it pretty low. And you can also put in a Fresnel on this as well, but again, it's not terribly necessary. I also, excuse me, I also don't really want to put a bump on the text, but you can do that, and you can kind of see if that looks good. Okay, next, now we have our materials made. Let's drag this material for the shape that we made, put that onto the torus, and let's drag this over to the text. And you can name these to keep things organized: shape and text. And while we're at it, we can just name this text and shape. Okay, so looking pretty good. This shape that we made is pretty low resolution. And the way that I like to do it is just put a subdivision surface. So this green box here, we just click that once and drag our shape to be a child of the subdivision surface. And we can just name this shape sub D. Okay, that smooths that out pretty good. And if you click on the subdivision surface, the subdivision editor is at 2 and the render is at 3. We can leave these settings just as it is. Next, now that we have this and we have our camera set up, I would like to start putting in some lights. So I'm going to click on the light, and I want to go to General. Again, let's go to an off-white. Just drag the yellow a little bit to the yellow. And we're going to make this area light. So with our camera unchecked, I just want to zoom out, pull this up, rotate this about 90 degrees, and we can hold down Shift, and that gives us 10-degree increments. And I just want to have that above, and with T on our keyboard, we can transform this and transform this a little bit bigger. Now I'm going to name this overhead, and I want to command click and drag our light. I want to change this to Omni, and I want to drag and bring this out to the side and keep this up and forward. And we can use our top view. So if you go FT on your keyboard, you can see our light here. We can just kind of drag this out to the front and to the top of our shape of our logo. And we can leave the intensity, we can bring that to about 65, something around there. And I also want to make sure I have shadow type. That's going to give us some smooth shadows with our detail. In fact, I want to do that to our overhead light as well. So shadow map soft for both. And I'm going to name this right. And how I name lights, I just try to keep it practical, where it's located in my document. So, but you can name these however you're more comfortable with. Okay, so I want to also have another light, and I'm going to name this bottom. I'm going to bring this all the way to the bottom, and I'm going to go to my front view, F4 on your keyboard, and let's zoom out, drag this down, and I want to put it centered to our logo, but down at the bottom. And I want to go to our side view, and I want to drag this. Let's see, am I right? Sorry, this has to be here. Okay. So I just want it right in front and at the bottom. And we can pull this out just slightly. However, I want to make the intensity about 35%. Just enough to give a little bit of light here. Shadow map is fine, soft. Now I want to create another light, and I'm going to have this rear. Except I'm going to have this in the back. And let me go to top view. I'm going to have this all the way in the back. Except I want this to be maybe of a bluer color. And we can push this a little bit. Just give it a little bit of color from the rear. Let's go to perspective mode. And I want to make sure that the intensity is up a little bit. So we can go to 115, 120, and really push the brightness there. And everything is fine. Shadow maps and is fine. So I'm liking how everything is set up. Let's go to our camera view and let's do a test render. Okay. That looks pretty good. One thing I'm noticing is this there's a bit of a shadow on the text from the shape, from the overhead shape. So we could do a couple of things there. We can actually bring up the light of the bottom text. Let's do another render. And that takes out that shadow a little bit. You can see the difference between our original setup. And I think I do kind of like the contrast. I like how the contrast, we have the light in the background. But I think this feels a little bit better. Now we could stop here, but I also would like to put in put in a sphere and make this very large, enough to encompass our logo and the camera. And we can also experiment with color in the background. So I'm going to make another material. Go to color, Fresnel, and I'm going to go with a dark bluish purple, and we can drag this darkness all the way down. Command click and drag this node all the way over. And again, I still want to make this dark but not completely black. I'm going to turn off specular, and that color might still be too bright. Drag this down a bit. We'll see what happens when we render. And I want to put this onto our sphere. Now let's give a render. And you can see we can kind of have some color. It's really a personal preference. You know, you can experiment with different colors in the background. But that's just how I do it. And you can make a larger render, maybe 1280 by 720. And we can take a look at the anti-aliasing. See we'll get some smoother shape on our shape and ambient occlusion as well. Turn off save for now, and then let's give a render. And you can see in our final render we can have a really nice looking shape. I guess that's subjective, but you can choose your own types of shape, experiment with some of the deformers. And let's try one more render. Let me get this zoomed out a little bit. We're a little too zoomed in, and I just want to center this a little bit more. I couldn't see the boundary here at these edges, so just kind of keep that in mind. You can kind of turn this off and kind of see where we're at in terms of where the camera cuts off, and just give it a little bit more breadth, a little bit more room to work with. Okay, we can turn our sphere back on. Give it a render. And again, experiment with colors, experiment with shapes, experiment with the text. The idea is to try a few different ideas, see how it looks, and see how things are. One thing I'm noticing is, as I'm looking at this render, the text sort of is a little too close, and we'll do a little bit better of alignment. Just real quick, I just want to, that little part is bothering me. So we'll go to horizontal spacing, and we'll just open this up a little bit. Okay, and let's, oops, my mistake. And let's just kind of get this a little bit better centered. Okay, let me render this one more time. And like I was saying, just experiment with like the textures, experiment with colors, and just kind of find something that works for you. These are just the colors and textures that I find interesting. But again, play around with different settings, and I would love to see some of your work. So again, put something in a comment section, any questions or anything that you would want to see worked on. I would love to hear from you, and I'll come back with a new tutorial. Thanks for watching.